Hello, welcome to Scifi Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I am talking about my book stats of 2023, basically going through all the books that I read and telling you all the various things about them for people that are interested in this kind of statistics. And yes, I have little graphs that are going to pop up here and there. So I hope you find this fun. I find it really fun. So, to get started, first of all, how many books did I read in 2023? I read 108 books, which is more than double my goal of 52, so that's pretty cool. I'm not really sure how I did that, but okay. So I read 9 books in January, 8 in February, 6 in March, 13 in April, 11 in May, 14 in June, 6 in July, 14 in August, 4 in September, 11 in October, 6 in November, and 6 in December. So I actually read a lot more in December, but I had some reviews I had to like prep for January. So yeah, I kind of base it on what I reviewed that month more than what I actually read because of like carryover and things like that. And sometimes I do like readathons and things like that where you have to read within a certain month, but I'm not going to review in that month. I just find it confusing. So anyway, so that means that the months where I read the least was actually September. I only read 4 books in September. And then the most I read was June and August. I read 14 books each that month, which makes sense because it's kind of like a holiday time. So yeah. So in terms of pages read, I read 34,706 pages, at least according to Goodreads page counts. Sometimes, I read a Kindle book and then I go on and I accidentally click on the paperback version or hardcover or something, and I just use that, to be honest. So it's around 34,000 pages, which is a lot of pages. Also, considering that I edit books for a living as well, so there's all those books that I did as well. I probably did about 18 books this year, or maybe 24 books this year. About 2 a month, probably. Yeah. On top of that, so formatting. So I read 1 book that was an audiobook arc. I read 13 books that were audiobooks. I read 16 ebooks. I read 36 arc ebooks. I read 7 hardcovers. I read 11 mass market paperbacks. Those are these little tiny buddies here. I read 18 paperbacks, and I read 5 paperback arcs, or like publisher copies. So that's pretty cool. Ebook arcs are obviously the highest here because I get them for free, obviously, and I have deadlines with them. But I guess if you discount the arcs, paperback is still kind of winning. But again, I'm reading a lot more ebooks this year, I find, just because it's easy. It's also easier for me in my schedule because I tend to read a lot at night when my husband goes to bed. And so for a while there, we didn't have anywhere else for me to read other than like downstairs. I don't want to read downstairs because I'm tired. I don't want to fall asleep on the couch. So I read like in bed with my tablet, and I find that it's easier than having like a little book light. So yeah. So the types of books that I read this year. This is in terms of indie and small press and big press, like traditionally published books. So we have 24 independent authors, like self-published books. There were 20 from small presses, and then there's 64 from big presses. The thing is, some of these big press ones, I wasn't sure if they were considered a small press or not, so probably a good 10 of those are actually small presses. And that's pretty good because most of the books I get on NetGalley, actually all the books I get on NetGalley are traditionally published books from big publishers usually, because the NetGalley is about $500 a month, US, and that's if you have the small package. So it's not like it's cheap. So yeah, So that's not too bad. 24 independent books. That's like 2 a month. That's pretty good. So in terms of publishers, I'm only going to list I'm going to list a bunch of them. So I had 3 from Ace, 3 from Angry Robot, 3 from ECW, 7 from Orbit, 5 from Penguin Random House, 3 from St. Martin's, 3 from Titan, 7 from Tor, 4 from Tor Nightfire, and 6 from Tor.com, which are different companies. I, for the longest time, thought Tor and Tor.com were the same thing. And then the rest were either 1 or 2, per publisher, or their independents of 64. So it's tied. Orbit and Tor, big surprise, are tied for the publisher that I frequent the most. As I said, that's not surprising to me because those are sci-fi fantasy publishers. I tend to like their stuff, so I tend to gravitate towards them. If you happen to watch this YouTube, you could auto-approve me on NetGalley. I mean, that would be pretty cool. In terms of genre, so this one's got a big breakdown here. So there's a lot of genres I read this year. I read 3 contemporary fictions, that's it. 3 historical fictions. I read 8 horror books. I read 4 literary fictions. I read 1 magical realism, which I guess is kind of fantasy, but whatever. I read 2 nonfictions. Actually, I read 3 nonfictions, so I must be missing 1 here. Anyway, whatever. 1 was an audiobook. I read 1 romance. I read 2 short story collections. I read 20 fantasy. Breaking that down, There were 6 epic fantasies, two cozy fantasies, 3 dark fantasy, 3 horror fantasy, and then 1 romance fantasy, I guess. 1 gas lamp, 1 comedy, and 1 YA fantasy. So yeah. Oh, and an adaptation. I actually read a bunch of adaptations, but I didn't put like a column for that. So I'm going to do that this year because I do read a lot of adaptations of other stories. And then we have sci-fi. So I read 63 sci-fi books this year. That's not surprising to me. Of all of them, 2 were adaptations. Again, same thing. I didn't have like a category for that, so I just kind of added it to subgenre. I read 13 classic sci-fis. I read 1 comedy sci-fi, 1 cyberpunk, 2 contemporary sci-fis. I'm not really sure what contemporary sci-fi means. I guess just like written today. I don't remember why I put that. 5 dystopian, 2 fantasy, 2 hard sci-fi, 1 horror fantasy, or 1 horror sci-fi. 2 literary sci-fis, 1 multiverse sci-fi, 5 mystery sci-fis, 2 new adult sci-fi, 1 romance sci-fi, 12 space operas. I read 2 spy-fis, which were the ones I just reviewed, 3 thrillers, and 1 time travel one. And then I read 6 post-apocalyptic, which were subgenres of all of these. I also read a lot of queer books, but I don't consider that a subgenre because I'm like, well, I don't know. Like having diversity, I don't think should be like a subgenre unless the book is about like a person's journey as a queer person coming out or dealing with homophobia, things like that. That I think is a valid subgenre. But for sci-fi, if it just features a lot of queer characters, I don't think it needs a subgenre for that. Anyway, that's my opinion. So then next we have years. So the most commonly read year this year was 2023 with 61 titles. That's because of NetGalley, obviously. I read 11 books in 2022. I read 5 from 2021, 4 from 2020, 3 from 2019 and 2018, 3 also from 2025. And then I read 1 a year from 2017 all the way down to, just 2017, 2016. And then 99, 95, 89, 87, 85, 83, 82, 78, 70, 67, 66, and 1818. But I also read 3 from 1976. So a lot of random offshoot years. Those are obviously classic sci-fi years, and then a bunch of modern stuff. So I want to read a lot more kind of older stuff next year, but we'll see if I can get to it. Anyway. So where did I purchase all these books? Unfortunately, a lot of them come from Amazon. So 4 came directly from Amazon. The Amazon ordered the paperback from. 12 I got from Audible. 14 I got from the author. Thank you very much, authors, for sending me free copies. 2 I got from Chapters Indigo. 1 I got as a gift. 9 I bought on my Kindle. 5 I got from the library. 35 from NetGalley. Thank you so much, NetGalley, for all the free books. 9 I got from the publishers. Also, thank you to the publishers for these free copies. I got 3 from the SPSFC competition. And then I got 14 from used bookstores. Majority of those are classic sci-fi. But I also got Alice, I think, from a used bookstore. In terms of books themselves, is this so for series or not? That's what I said. So for standalone books that don't have, a sequel or whatever, there were 69 of those. Nice. For a series, starting with book 1. So I read 23 book 1s of a series. So starting a series. Will I continue the series? I should, make a little subcategory for that. Am I going to continue? Because I'd say probably I'm going to continue maybe 5 of them. A series prequel, I read 1, which was obviously Bookshops and Bone Dust, and then a series book 2 or onward, and so that was 15. So I read 15 2 plus book 2 plus. So that means I'm probably going to continue with those series. I know one of them for sure is the War Eternal one. Obviously the Empire of the Wolf one. So in terms of diversity, I like to look at this because I like to see how I can, contribute more to reading more diversely, because in 2022, 70% of authors published were white people. So the industry really does need to step up in terms of that. There's a lot of small presses that are doing a lot to fix that problem, but the big ones, they don't seem to be really moving on that. And that's a shame, because there are so many really interesting, great books that might not have gotten a chance if, a publisher hadn't looked at it and said that, oh, this does have merit. Because a lot of times it is a racist thing where publishers are like, oh, well, this might not sell, So anyway, which is false. Anyway, rant aside, I don't count the authors in my diversity tracking here because, sometimes their bio doesn't say if they're queer, or they don't have a photo, or their name doesn't indicate, that they're a person of color. So, yeah. So in terms of characters, though, this year there was a mix of point of views, main characters. So I said yes if a prominent one was, featured diversity. So, for example, person of color, so unknown or non-human main character would be 14. There's a lot of alien main characters this year. Yes, they were a person of color, was 33. No was 61. So, okay. This surprises me, honestly. I thought I was like way above that. I mean, some of this, might not have tracked this properly though. Also, a lot of classic sci-fi obviously doesn't fall into this most of the time. So, yeah. When it comes to LGBTQ plus people, two characters, we're either not told or, it's not really, we're not sure. No was 74, meaning they were cishet, and then yes, they were a queer character as 31. But I had a lot of really great books that had some awesome secondary characters that were LGBTQ plus. So that would be interesting to track as well next year to say, okay, if there's 74 cishet main characters, how many exist within a queer normative space? Because that would be interesting too. Now I also have women identifying. So 72 main characters I read this year were women identifying. 33 were not, so men pretty much. And then 6 were unknown or non-binary. So clearly when I read blurbs, I tend to gravitate towards main characters that are women, which makes sense to me because that's whom I identify with. So in terms of authors, sex and or gender, I based on what they identify with. I had 54 female authors and 54 male authors. So 50-50 gender parity in my reading. This is roughly though just based on kind of their names and what I can remember from their bios. There is a margin of error here. But what's interesting to me is that if half the authors I read were dudes, then a great chunk of men are writing women main characters. And I think that's really interesting because I didn't come across really classic sci-fi side, any female main characters written by men this year that were like fall into those like tropes of like men writing women. I mean, sci-fi, the type of sci-fi that I read tends to not fall into that as well. And I read a lot of self-published, which also I'm picky about, so I kind of read the first couple chapters, and I did read a couple chapters of some that I was just like, ew. So yeah, so that's interesting though to me. I also forgot to flag whether the book was Canadian or not, so notes to do next year because I do like to keep an eye on that because I like to support the Canadian publishing industry even though it is esoteric. And I also forgot to track my star ratings, so I'll do that too. But as you folks know, I tend to rate high anyway, so yeah. I do have some booktube stats for you because I think it would be fun. So the video that got the most views this year was Camp Zero, which was surprising to me. I didn't realize that book was so people were searching it so much, or maybe there just weren't that many reviews on it. So yay for me. Also, Shark Heart came in close. And then when I last checked this, Prompt Excursion and Pinata were tied as well. So I'm like, okay, all right. My least liked videos were my 25 sci-fi fantasy titles, which is, in truth though, all of these only got 1 dislike and the rest were like likes, and my likes aren't very high. It's like maybe 6 or 7 for each, so this doesn't really mean anything. I just think it's funny. So yeah, I was like, oh, okay. And then my Doom video for some reason, and then the Marigold, I'm like, okay. And then On Earth as It Is on television got 1 dislike. Someone didn't like that video. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to like my videos. I also want to do 2 shout outs. I want to shout out to Tuffy and Rod Gilly. You two are awesome. Thank you so much for your support with all of your comments. I love reading them. And if I ever miss any, I'm so sorry. YouTube sometimes doesn't show me when there's a comment. Yeah, but I don't mean to miss them. And thank you again for your support. And you should check out Rod's channel, everybody, because he's a great writer in his own right, and he does his own videos too. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching my channel this year. Thank you for getting me to almost 500 subs. That's so exciting. It makes me just feel like, the time that I put into this is worthwhile because I really enjoy doing it. I would probably do it if I had 10 subscribers. But I like to, try to make sure everyone's time is well worth it. And yeah, so thank you again, and looking forward to sharing some good reviews with you next month. I'm not doing a TBR video for next month, so I'll do it now. I'm reading 381, which is a sci-fi book. I already read it. I actually loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So that review is coming up the 1st or on the 3rd or something. I also am reviewing That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, which, again, I've already read this, and I will tell you that I wasn't super into it. So you might get a rare, I didn't like this video. I'm also going to post a classic sci-fi book haul for you of like 25 books. I went on a spree. I'm going to do Mortal Mission, which was the 4th one of the quarterfinalists for the SPSFC. I'm going to post that one. One called Exordia, which is a demon fantasy book. I might do a review of the Bone Shard Emperor. I don't know. I'm kind of like bored of the audiobook, so I'm not sure if I'm going to finish it. I might actually swap it out for the Three Body Problem, which we were reading this month with the Interstellar Book Club. So I might swap that out if I can finish it in time. I'm going to be reviewing The Trials of Empire. I'm so excited to get started with that when I'm starting next. I'm so excited. I'm going to be reviewing a very bizarre classic sci-fi book called Manseed. And then lastly, I'm going to be reviewing Gog Magog, which is by Jeff Noon and someone else, and it's an arc I got from Angry Robot. So that's what I'm doing in January. Yeah, and so onwards to the new year. Happy New Year, everybody.